Right now, Hurricane Lee is undergoing rapid swings in intensity as its future becomes better defined, and with that, tons of people are buzzing with theories and misinformation. In this video, I'll break down what's going on with this hurricane, and whether you should be worried or not over the next 10 days. We're going to look at where the driving forces came from that are going to affect Lee's path and intensity, why Lee previously reached Category 5 and then weakened, and what to expect going forward as another storm, Margot, lurks off to the east. Meteorologist Andy Hill here at the Weather Forecasting Desk. Let's dive right into it. This is the infrared imagery of Hurricane Lee over the past 2 days until now. It's generally being driven to the west-northwest in this direction by a couple of upper-level anticyclones up here and down here, as well as the beta effect, which is where mini spinnies develop on the periphery of the storm and generally drive it to the west-northwest. These develop thanks in part to the Earth's rotation, and generally they are going to give it a little bit more of that shove to the northwest. You can see its incredibly quick organization and persistence as a major hurricane, but then it starts to fall apart through the day yesterday. Watch in this graphic how the southwest part of the hurricane starts to shrink inward with time, getting shoved into the center, just right here. This shove inward was the result of a concentrated area of wind shear, and pretty hefty shear at that, some that the models actually missed. Now, in all fairness, this is pretty difficult to forecast. We're really looking at this area of red right here, which is shear that is unfavorable for hurricanes. Hurricane Lee sitting right here with that eye. So the shear that we're looking at here is the winds that progressively shift. In this case, they shift to the northeast as you go up in the atmosphere. This little band of wind shear in the yellow and red is the product of one of those troughs that I talk about pretty often, but this one in particular is called a tropical upper tropospheric trough, or TUT. You can think of it like King Tut. As of this video, it's still impacting Hurricane Lee a little bit, which is leading to that general weakening trend we've seen over the last couple of days if you've heard of any forecasts from the National Hurricane Center. It now no longer has that clearly defined eye and is no longer a Category 5 hurricane as of this video. However, that wind shear will lessen up with time over the next couple of days as the hurricane travels to the west-northwest along this path. You can see how it gets back into that area of green, which is favorable for the development intensification of hurricane. So while that chunk of winds is shaping the hurricane, once again, we can see it pushing into the southwestern side, the bottom left of the storm, pushing that part of the storm into the center. And in doing so, the hurricane becomes this oblong shape. We can use this shape to visually track where the storm will move next. Because hurricanes generally move 90 degrees from their major axis, or the longer part of the storm denoted here. They'll move generally in this direction that forms a right angle. So you can see that in progress here. So what's likely going to push this hurricane to the north going forward? Well, this model run is looking at a level of pressure about 4 miles above your head. In particular, the model run I'm showing you here is actually from 4 days ago. If we turn our attention to look closely at Canada, we can see the origin of what will be a pretty impactful trough about a week from this model run. Watch it continue to the east and then eventually dig down into the Great Lakes and eastern states around Tuesday, September 12th. This trough continues to develop down south and east because there's been a lot of hot air in this region recently. You guys in Ontario and the Northeast have been feeling that up until the last few days. This trough is going to deepen here in order to push this hot air to the north toward the poles and bring some colder air down into the states and southeastern Canada. And that happens all in a beautiful balancing act from the atmosphere. We can see that manifest on this chart here from the Weather Prediction Center. A cold front developing and pushing down to the south and east across the central states and also across southeastern Canada. So this will continue to push through the states, through New England and southeastern Canada into Monday the 11th. Another consequence or benefit from this trough is a blast of fall air for a lot of us. The western edge of the trough will bring a ton of unsettled weather and thus several rounds of much needed heavy rain and cooler temperatures to the southern plains for y'all in Oklahoma and even down into central Texas. And the eastern edge of it will continue the theme of severe weather that y'all have been seeing the past few days along a stationary front here in the mid-Atlantic into Pennsylvania and the Northeast. Though today will probably be the maximized risk for more sporadic damaging sweeping windstorms, maybe with some small hail, as has been observed in areas like Washington, D.C., and parts of Pennsylvania over the last couple days. It's neat, albeit somewhat disconcerting, to think about the weather you're getting being tied to the path of a significant hurricane somewhere down the line. Now, if we go up to the latest model run, we can still see that trough in the dark greens here developing. Winds around the trough follow it in this direction, along these lines called isoheights. Generally, the winds will also steer into the low pressure. You can start to see how a large trough like this would force a hurricane along the jet stream that it bends around. And I'll show you exactly what you're thinking with this map here that shows the transport of moisture. So you can see those winds denoted clearly here with those arrows pointing to the north, and boom. Now, all of that analysis is to say that the most likely scenario is a dramatic swing to the north, and that will start to occur around 5 to 7 days from this upload, because there is relatively high confidence that the trough will be strong enough to capture Hurricane Lee in its jet stream and chuck it to the north. At this point, I think this is the case we should prepare for, as thus far, my forecast reasoning agrees with other tropical meteorologists. Why? Because consensus forecasting will always have the highest average skill in predicting the path of a tropical system. What you're looking at here is an example of a super ensemble, which is either a manual or a deep learning model run on powerful servers. They generally converge on similar solutions to a consensus or an average, and they achieve this by weighting the best performing models individually. With Hurricane Lee, virtually every single member in this super ensemble starts to curve it north in the 5 to 6 day time frame, and this is reflected in that cone of uncertainty forecast by the National Hurricane Center in this part of the forecast. So once we're confident that the hurricane is going to be driven north by the trough, it won't be able to escape it so long as the trough holds together. And because the trough itself is generally much larger than the hurricane is, it will hold itself together. So, at this stage, there is nothing wrong with being prepared ahead of time in New Brunswick, Nova Scotia, and the eastern coast of the New England area, given this most likely scenario. Some dates for you to latch onto that include some leniency both before and after some impacts that could occur in these regions are September 16th to September 21st. Around those times, Lee will likely persist with lower end hurricane strength or maybe upper end tropical storm force strength. And that will happen as it becomes an extratropical storm, which simply means it has a cold and a warm front attached to it, rather than that warm eye in the center with everything else swirling around it. But wait, of course, there's another wrench in the forecast, and her name is Margot. So, one factor in the formation of Hurricane Lee and expected to be Hurricane Margot is the MJO, Madden-Julian Oscillation, shown here in this graph. So what we're looking at here in particular is this cluster of red dots that shows us where the MJO is situated in the one-day forecast. It's pretty solidly in between phases 3 and 4 at the moment, and it has been sitting there over the past few days. These phases in particular seem to correspond to a higher track density in existing tropical cyclones, shown here from meteorologist Eric Webb. Margot is formed in the same spot near the Azores that Lee tracked through earlier this week. You can see as we get into phase 4 that there's that higher correspondence of continued Atlantic cyclone tracks. However, with Margot, after a few days, there's a really high uncertainty with her track. Given this, there's the question on whether or not she will interact with Lee. About a week out from now, Lee is going to be over here, which is some 15 to 20 degrees longitude from most solutions of Margot. Given the average distance between the two, that's definitely over 1,000 miles away, well over 1,000 miles away. So the infamous Fujiwara effect, where storms circle around each other, will most likely not be seen before any impacts to land from Hurricane Lee are possible. However, Margot is expected to be a hurricane, and thus it will have winds that flow out of the storm from 4 to 8 miles above the surface. This is showing Hurricane Lee as an example in a near-term forecast. Tough to see, but you can follow the streamlines here and see that winds are flowing out from the storm in multiple different directions here, and thus the winds from Margot, wherever she ends up, will flow outward, some of which will reach Lee's path eventually, meaning that there could be a very slight shift west due to the influence from Margot. Now, I mentioned this being very slight because I don't expect this shift to be a major game changer in any capacity, and this is due to the most likely to be realized large distance between the storm. By the time Margot tries to make it up towards where Hurricane Lee will be, it's probably going to be pretty close to the coastline. Now, if Margot does take that very rapid northwest push push toward Hurricane Lee, it will definitely experience the outflow from Hurricane Lee, thus pushing it away from any primary land interactions. So with that in mind, just know that I look at most everything important to make sure this forecast is sound. Thanks to the Lightning crew here for the immense support, and I'll see you in the next one.